I want to give you a quick overview of how to use the developer tools in Internet Explorer. And if you're a Mac user, then you might find it more helpful to use Citrix to do this, although it works for PCs too. Generally on a PC you've probably got a copy of Internet Explorer that you could use. But one way or another, this is a nice way to view some of the older versions of Internet Explorer that we need to test for. Now, as I'm currently recording this, in use right now is IE 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I think 11's out on the market too. And unfortunately, each one behaves differently. What you'll learn with browsers is that they're proprietary products. That means they were developed by a company, most likely for some sort of profit, which means that even if they didn't expect to drive their business by providing that product, they felt like they could build a better browser, which means that they did some things differently than other browsers on the market. So as I'm recording this right now, we have to do what's known as cross-browser testing. We have to test in every browser that we think our users will be using. Better yet, we want to test in every browser that we know our users will be using, and you need to do that through analytics, but that's a conversation for another day and probably another class. Suffice it to say for now, you want to test your website in as many different browsers that are currently on the market as possible. Most recently, support for IE6 has dropped, unless of course you're coding for, say, residents of China. So it really does depend on your audience and your user base. For example, some of the larger enterprise level clients like healthcare and colleges and universities have to support older browsers because of the systems that are available on campus or within the hospital to be used. A lot of times it's really difficult for bigger companies that you would expect to have the latest and greatest to be able to update every system that's behind their firewall. And so they actually do support the older browsers. One of the biggest ones in town actually still supports IE7, and IE7 as of last year was the main one that they were using. So just bear that in mind. Now, hopefully we're moving towards an age where cross-browser testing will be less of an issue once you start entering your career, but right now it's become a bit more of one because we have to test for all of the releases of desktop browsers, so IE 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, Opera, and we haven't even started talking about mobile, which would be iOS, Chrome for iOS, Android browser, so you can see it gets out of hand pretty quickly. So anyway, you want to try to test your site on pretty much any kind of operating system and browser you can get your hands on. And if you use a Mac, it's important for you to understand that IE, Internet Explorer, does still have, I think, around at least maybe 40% of the user share. Google Chrome is really gaining in popularity, so it's got about half the user share, but IE is a close second. But then IE fragments into all of the different releases. So anyway, we're going to look at how to test using a PC, specifically if you're on a Mac, but also if you just need to have access to browsers that you don't have on your computer, this would be a good way to do it. Obviously, you've used Citrix before, hopefully for some of your Dreamweaver exercises, but if not, if it's new to you, Citrix basically just installs a virtual machine in a cloud, hosted server or a server hosted at CPCC so that you can access it. Kind of mimics if you were to log into a lab computer. So if you log into Citrix, and you can just go to citrix.cpcc.edu, by the way, you should be prompted to log in. And once you do log in, you should be given the IT Division desktop as one of your computer options. Before we go much further, I'm going to log out really quickly and verify the login process. Okay, yeah, it doesn't ask me for a domain. It used to, and so I wanted to make sure that that was not going to be an issue for you. If you're ever asked for a domain, yours is lab, by the way, if you're a student. There's also CPCC, that's faculty and staff, but lab would be your domain if you're trying to log into a lab computer or another resource that asks you for that. So let's go ahead and fire up the IT Division desktop and take a look at Internet Explorer, some of the older versions of it too. Now again, if you're running a PC at home and you have IE, you may be able to just use your own version of Internet Explorer for this. Hang on, let me resize this window to fit in the area that you're viewing. Okay, you see it fires up pretty quickly and we're immediately given access to an install of Internet Explorer. Now this is going to be IE9 because we are using Windows 7 here. I can just tell by the interface. And what we're going to want to do is test. You're going to want to test, but in order to be able to show you a site that's probably going to have some differences in an older version of IE, we should test one that is known to not support older versions of IE7 so you can understand the difference. So in this case, I'm thinking that our best bet is going to be Bootstrap. They just went to Bootstrap 3, and I know for a fact it doesn't support IE7. So this is what Twitter Bootstrap's website looks like when you're using IE9. And so you can see some nicer CSS. Most of this stuff is built with CSS, so this is typography. They're probably using a CSS gradient back here. They've got rounded edges on the Bootstrap tile. So this is probably a pretty good candidate for us to test this out. Now, the way you want to test your browser, you can actually test several different releases of IE from within IE9. It's a simulator. Now, that being said, there is the caveat that if you could test in an actual release of the older browser, that's going to be the most reliable, because that way you know exactly what you're going to get. But this is pretty good for our purposes for being able to test. Now, the way you do that is to change your browser mode and your document mode to the version of Internet Explorer that you want to test in. So in this case, let's take a look at, we're in IE9. Let's see what happens if we switch to IE7 for both our browser and our document mode. Okay, so you can see some things did happen. The rounded edges went away, for instance. The background got lighter, so it probably was a CSS gradient, and they have set it up to degrade to a flat color if somebody's using IE7. And then you can see a little bit happened here with the padding and the margins as well. So that gives you an idea that you may want to test for some things when you check your site using this. The advice that I would give you is to interact with your navigation menu very specifically, because that's a functional aspect. So one of the real common problems you'll run into is that maybe you've got a drop-down menu in your navigation and it falls behind an image on the page or some text on the page. That's something you're going to want to learn how to fix. So that's really important. That's how people get around your site. Things that are more cosmetic, like the curved edges, it's a really good idea for you to learn how to fix them right now for the sake of academia. But when you're in the workplace, those may be things that you decide with your team that it's not as important for you to worry about perfecting those in IE7 or IE6, as long as the site can be used and as long as the site can be navigated. So that's the grain of salt I would give you. But what you do want to do while you've got Citrix fired up is test in IE9 if you don't have that on your computer, IE8 and IE7, and take a look at how it not only looks but how it works. Make sure that everything works. That's the most important thing that you do in your cross-browser testing. How it looks is obviously important, especially to those of us who are, within the design profession, but how it works is much more important to your user experience. So just focus on those things, and when you find issues like this, depending on how you want your site to present, I would say for the course, if the only issues that you find are cosmetic, fix them. Just for the exercise, just for the experience. If you find you have a lot of issues though, start with function. Especially, again, I cannot stress enough, test your navigation. Make sure that those drop-down menus, especially if you're using drop-down menus in conjunction with images, work. That's the most important thing that you're looking for here. So anyway, just an overview of how to use Citrix to access Internet Explorer and how to use a newer version of Internet Explorer to test in older versions of Internet Explorer. Hopefully this has been helpful to you. Good luck with testing and debugging your sites.